Hi, my name's Gemma. I'm one of the Community Engagement Rangers for Hampshire County Council. However, today I'm doing something slightly different with my day. I'm here at the Ashford Hangers Reserve, which is stunning, and I'm here to talk to a couple of our specialists about ash dieback. We're going to cover the trees themselves and how to identify them. We're going to cover the ash dieback disease. We're going to look at what we do with felled trees and, most importantly, our hopes for the future. So we're here to speak to Tom about ash trees, identifying them and talking about the fungus. Hi, Tom.
Hi.
Could you tell us, please, first of all, what you do within Hampshire County Council?
So I'm a tree and woodland officer. My main role is identifying trees and identifying features in them which could cause harm to people or properties, and making risk assessments based on tree features.
Okay, so obviously specifically we're talking about ash trees today, and we've managed to find some behind us.
Yes, we have, yeah.
So for a member of the public wanting to identify an ash tree, what are they looking for?
Well, ash trees have this opposite form on their branches. So these grow opposite to one another rather than staggered down the branch. They also have a very obvious feature, which is the black buds at the tips of all of the branches. And when these buds burst and they turn into leaves, they've got a pinnate form, which means that they're pointy and they grow in sets of 6 or 12. And they have a serrated form, which is very obvious once you get your eye in for them. But the main feature is those black buds there.
Right, okay, yeah, and I can clearly see them on here and the trees behind us as well. So obviously we've got a lot of ash trees in Hampshire. What is the importance within an ecosystem with the ash trees?
So ash are a really important species because they're both a pioneer species, which means they're one of the first tree species to move into new land to create woodland, but they also support up to 1,000 species, including woodpeckers, dormice, loads of species of lichen and fungus. And so they're really key in the environment for creating habitats.
That's a huge amount of species. That's really surprised me. So they are so important. Obviously, we're here to talk about ash dieback and the signs of ash dieback. And again, we have seen one on the tree behind us. Now, because these trees are so important, we need to spot these signs, don't we? And take suitable measures. So what are the signs that we're looking for? So
you'll know a tree's got ash dieback because it gets diamond-shaped lesions on the bark and underneath where the branches join the stem. And these lesions come up as purple, and so they're very obvious to the untrained eye. You'll also notice that your tree's canopy has got a bit thin and looks quite brittle. That's why it's called dieback, because the tree starts dying back further and further into its crown from the tips. The fungus grows on the leaves of ash trees, and then it spreads via the wind, and it can go up to 10 miles from its original host. It infects new ash trees in the leaves, moves into the vascular system of the tree, into the branches and into the tips of the twigs, where it propagates, overwinters in the leaf litter at the base of the tree, and then in spring starts its life cycle again, sprouting, moving via the wind, and then infecting more trees. So what would happen if we left ash dieback unmanaged? Ash trees make up a large population of the UK's tree stock, so we would see a lot of incidents of members of the public, property, cars being hit by falling branches, and potentially even falling trees as the disease would progress. And we'd also see a lot of disruption to ecosystems as trees degrade in woodland environments. So it's very important that local councils get on top of ash dieback and try and mitigate risks to public and environment where possible. So if you're a member of the public and you need to report a tree with ash dieback, where would you go? So if you've seen a tree with ash dieback on our land, you can contact Hampshire at our email address, ashdieback@hants.gov.uk. Okay. But if you're looking at a tree on private land, maybe land that you own, the best place to report it would be with your local tree officer. And so you can find them on your local government websites. Brilliant, thank you. So I'm now here with James, who's another member of our ash dieback team. Hi, James.
Hi, Gemma.
Could you please explain what your job role is?
Hi, I'm the Senior Project Officer for Hampshire County Council for the Ash Dieback project.
Excellent. So my first question for you really is, once a tree has been found to have ash dieback, what do you do? What's the next step?
So the first things we consider is the area which we're in. So it might be a high use area. So we have to take into consideration the risk that those trees could cause to the public. So we would consider maybe felling the trees in that area for public safety in case they were to fail on cars, property or the public itself.
What about somewhere a little bit more difficult? So obviously we're in at the Ashford Hangers right now.
Sure.
So we're a little bit more out the way.
So in a place like here, which is a NNR, SSI, we would consider the public use. So we have lots of paths and trails here, but people aren't really stopping, they're not in the vicinity of the trees falling for very long. So we'll kind of look at in an area like here where we'd leave the trees to kind of degrade by themselves. So.
Of course, I mean, we've already spoken about species who find those trees very important. So sometimes leaving the deadwood there is extremely important for natural habitat.
Indeed, yes. So we would consider to leave a lot of the wood within the forest, so those species, can still use that deadwood. Absolutely.
You mentioned SSIs and national nature reserves. When you are looking to fell a tree, do you have to do certain surveys or checks? Because will there be different ways of doing things in different areas which are SSI, for example?
Certainly. So when we identify an area with ash dieback, we always get wildlife surveys done, EPS surveys, European Protected Species surveys, and they're done by our in-house ecologists. So we always get a full report from them. We also then talk to our friends at Natural England as well, and the Forestry Commission. So we're always getting felling licences for all the trees that are cut down.
OK, so let's just talk about the process. So the tree's been identified, your rangers have been out to confirm, and you've got the surveys done which are necessary. From there, what happens to the tree?
We put a contract together and that goes out to tender to contractors. We have the trees felled. Some of the trees are monolithed, which means just the main branches are taken off and we leave a deadwood stick, which is very good for standing deadwood habitat. So once the timber's been felled, it goes out to the roadside where it's picked up by lorries, and a lot of it goes off to biomass to create energy. A lot goes for firewood, and then we have some small businesses that will turn some into furniture, turning bowls, etc. We're here with Trevor from South East Woodfields to see what happens to that timber and wood after it's been chipped and where it goes to. We felled a lot of trees on a local road here for health and safety. We took the trees down and we had contractors, they chipped all that wood into lorries and then it came here.
Yeah.
What happens once it comes here?
Once it comes to here, it goes onto a drying floor and dried down from probably 45% to 30%.
This is the drying floor. Behind that we have a biomass boiler fueled by logs and stuff from local tree surgeons.
Yeah.
And then what does that boiler do? That heats the floor here, is that right?
Yeah, basically goes into a heat exchanger, then goes under the floor, and there's fans under the floor that pushes hot air up through. Once it's dried, it's then screened before it goes onto the boilers.
Right.
And main customers for this site is National Trust, which is Up Park, Hinton Ampner and Mottisfont.
Right.
And also Whitehill, YMCA and Marwell Zoo.
And it goes, Marwell Zoo, it goes into their tropical house.
Into their tropical house, yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. Excellent, yeah. So we're here today at Marwell Zoo, where we followed some of our wood chip and we followed it here to the tropical house. And we're here with Duncan, who's going to explain to us a little bit what happens to that wood chip.
Good morning. So we're here in our tropical house at Marwell Wildlife. When we designed this building, we're obviously trying to recreate a tropical paradise for all of our birds and animals that live in this kind of environment. But that's quite an energy intensive environment that needs a lot of heat. And so we wanted to make sure we were producing that heat in the most sustainable manner possible. And for us, that meant wood chip was a really good solution for that, and particularly local wood chip that comes from the woodlands of Hampshire.
Lovely.
And so this tie-up with waste wood that's unfortunately come from the ash dieback is a perfect solution for our energy needs for this very warm and humid environment.
So Duncan, once the wood chip has been processed and it comes into your store, what happens to it from there?
Well, we've got two heating processes for this building. We have the wood chip boiler, which is where your material is going to heat the building. And we also have a much larger boiler that uses our animal waste to heat a larger heat network. Now that process needs heat to dry out the material before it can be burnt.
Right.
So the wood chip from your waste will come into our material yard out the back, where it's tipped into a big hopper, which is then transferred into our fuel store, and then an auger feeds it from the fuel store into our boiler. And that runs to keep the building at around 25 degrees, which, as we can feel, is where it is at the moment.
It's very warm in here, yeah.
But some of that heat is also used to then dry our animal waste, which is then stockpiled and ready to use in the winter when we need an awful lot more heat to heat both this building, but also other nearby buildings within the zoo. So that heat feeds into a heat network, which heats our Okapi building, Marwell Hall, the Grade 1 listed building. It heats some of our office buildings, and also it heats our Life in the Trees exhibit, which has a various tree dwelling exhibits, and our new Thriving Through Nature arid exhibit. So all of that material is heating an awful lot of buildings and replacing oil-fired heating in all those locations.
Brilliant, and it's all comes from a sustainable source and is really economical, isn't it?
Very, very local, which is great for us. Biomass, so zero carbon. Yep. So it's made a huge difference to our carbon footprint, and it's a wonderful story to be able to tell our guests here at the zoo.
Lovely. Well, thanks, Duncan. That's really good. Some of the logs that we've processed during this operation are going to be milled into planks, which are going to come and replace this lovely bench. So we're up here on the shoulder of mountain on Ashford Hangers. This bench is a bit worse for wear, so it needs replacing, and it's good that we're using the timber from the source, very, very local, and it's going to a very good use.
So finally, we're going to talk about the hope for the future, and I'm going to go to James first. Can ash trees be resistant to this fungus?
Well, the hope is that there are some resistant ash trees out there. The only way we'll know is by waiting to see. So as the County Council, we are leaving large retention zones. So one here at Ashford Hangers, we're planning to leave most of the ash trees within the woodland to just degrade naturally. We'll be felling a few trees in key points near roads and near high public use areas, but generally we're going to leave the woodland to degrade and just let the natural processes come on. We hope that then the natural regen will come through, and within that we might see some resistant trees.
Excellent, let's hope it happens.
Fingers crossed.
And then going to nature, Tom, how can nature get used to this? If we're going to have ash dieback in our ecosystem, how is it going to adapt?
What we've found from studies has shown that sycamore is coming up as a tree which shares a lot of dependent species as ash. And so the hope is that as ash declines, sycamore and other pioneer species will come through and fill the gaps left by ash, and that nature will just bounce back.
And hopefully the trees which are able to regenerate healthily can then be more equal in the ecosystem of the woodland.
Exactly, yeah. This is what we saw with elm. When elm went, it left spaces which got filled by other trees, and we're hoping that will happen with ash here.
Okay. So if you're a property owner and you've got trees on your land and you're not sure whether they're ash trees or not, what would your recommendation be?
I'd recommend that people got their trees looked at by a professional, be that a tree surgeon or a tree inspector. And they can give you advice on your legal responsibilities around trees on your property and risk to members of the public.
Thank you. And one last question for you, James. Obviously, we love getting volunteers involved with everything that we do. Is there any projects out there that volunteers can get involved in, which is planting and regenerating new trees and new woodland?
Yeah, indeed we do. We've got the Hampshire Forest Partnership, and that is all about getting as many trees in the ground in Hampshire as possible. We've also got many volunteering opportunities and tree planting opportunities within our country parks and our sites.
Excellent. So all around Hampshire, so there's something for everyone.
Indeed.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to Tom and James, because I think your knowledge has really brought the subject of ash dieback to a front here. If you'd like to see more of what we do, there's our YouTube channels, there's our Facebook and Instagram channels, so please do check out what we're up to. And please like and share this video. Let's get the message out there. But until next time, thanks very much.